If we stand together, we'll never fall.
Hey guys, welcome back to a bonus episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. Today is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. I am halfway back from the big city where I was at the Cleveland Clinic for most of the day at 2 appointments. One with my primary doctor, the functional medicine doctor, and 2 with the behavioral health specialist that I've been seeing as well. First of all, I'm going to break down what I took away from the doctor's visit, and then on the drive home, I am going to talk freely about the behavioral health therapist and the question that she posited to me as we closed out our session today, which was, what do I think is happening right now? So I'll get to that in a second. But first, here's what's up with functional medicine. Now, this journey began all the way back in September, early September of 2021, and I was sick. I had a number of issues going on, including but not limited to a chronic neurological disorder. I have epilepsy, have had it since the age of 13, and at that time, I had pretty severe gastrointestinal problems that had been going on for a number of years, but had really escalated last year to the point where I had seen a specialist and had also been hospitalized on account of the severe diarrhea that I had. So by the time I made it to functional medicine, I had been diagnosed with ulcers, colitis, and something along the lines of an unspecified type of irritable bowel syndrome. And we had ruled out pancreatic cancer and a number of other bad things. So the gastroenterologist couldn't figure out what was going on. No one could really figure out what was going on. Having felt like I'd run out of options, I went to functional medicine. At that time, I was put on a grain-free elimination diet, which I was to follow for 6 to 8 weeks before slowly reintroducing things into my diet. I decided to follow it for a longer period of time due to some other medications that I was on and some testing that needed to be done. So I followed this diet for, 2 months. Had a bunch of blood work done. The blood work revealed that I had some unusually high mold levels, or potential. I had markers in my blood that indicated potentially high mold levels. Additional urine testing indicated that this was indeed the case. And my second follow-up appointment with functional medicine in mid-December, right around Christmas time, had me maintaining the current protocols that I was on, changed a couple of the supplements that I was on, and really started attacking this mold with some binding agents in the form of a product called GI Detox. Okay. Now, I had been taking these binders, and the idea was to take this and repeat some of the initial testing that was done in September. Now, I had kind of fallen off the wagon with my diet in a number of ways for a period of time, and I did an episode on that recently, just a few episodes back, called Falling Off the Wagon. And I have since gotten back on, and dialogue with the doctor basically resulted in no problem, life happens, let's start over. We're going to do 3 months on these binders and then repeat the mycotoxin screening. Or, depending on how things are going, we may just check my C4A levels, which can fluctuate due to the use of those binders and can trigger a false kind of a false test result. But basically, as far as the doctor is concerned, we are going to focus on the mold right now, because based on what I have been doing, he is confident that my gut health is at a much better point than it was in September. So we are going to focus on the mold, because apparently from a neurological standpoint, this particular type of mold, which I cannot name now, but I could if I had all my information in front of me, is considered an excitotoxin. And these are not good things for those with chronic neurological disorders like myself, people who have epilepsy and the like. So I am basically going to stay the course. I'm going to try to double down on my efforts and return to where I was in the fall, which is going to be a little bit more difficult because it is springtime, it is digging season, but I can do this with some simple changes, a lot more sardines and oysters and easy foods. So wish me luck, guys, on that. And that is a segue into, in addition to the mold, it is encouraged that with the inclusion of these binding agents in my supplementary protocol to get some exercise, at least something to work up a glistening on the skin, not anything too insane and perhaps a little bit more robust than my current stretching program. That will help aid in the elimination and removal of these mycotoxins, all right, this mold. So, excuse me, part of the functional medicine process, right, was behavioral health. There's kind of 4 components to the functional medicine process, or the functional medicine department at the Cleveland Clinic. 1 is with the functional medicine doctor. 2 is with the nutritionist. 3 is with a behavioral health coach, and 4 is, or health therapist, and 4 is with a health coach, just to help keep you on track for those that need it. I have worked hardly at all with the health coach. The nutritionist to a certain extent, the behavioral health coach more than I have with the actual doctor. Initially, I had questioned whether or not I was going to actually participate with the behavioral health therapist, because like I said, there was a lot going into my overall physical health leading up into what led me to functional medicine in September. When I learned that this was part of it, now it wasn't that I was opposed to it because I'm a dude and I don't do therapy and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm very familiar with therapy and counseling. I've seen a number of different counselors and therapists over the years, and I'm certainly not opposed to it. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. I think it's good practice. That's not where my mind was at. But luckily, I decided to keep an open mind and say, well, what have I got to lose other than some drive time back and forth to the city? Gives me an excuse to frequent some Vietnamese restaurants up there that I don't often have an opportunity to go to as well, which I did right before recording this episode. So I have a full mind and a full belly of hot tea and God help me with this pronunciation, pho đặc biet, just the standard pho with all the beef. Couldn't help myself. Meatballs, tripe, all the good stuff. God. And it was delicious. A fine broth. The meat was nice and rare in the broth. It was delicious. Some of the best I've had in Cleveland. #1 pho on Superior Road. Recommended highly. There you go. Now, I've seen this behavioral health therapist, and I'll get into the guts of this on the drive home, and I'd like to get going, but I wanted to share some backstory with you here in the parking lot by the airport after escaping the big city and getting to a point where I'm a little bit more familiar with and a little bit more comfortable talking. Now, the question at the end of the session with her this morning when I met with her prior to the doctor was, what do I think is happening right now? And to provide some context for that, in our last session, or second to last session, I was tasked with journaling about my spirituality. The last session was waylaid by some dialogue about some things that were happening in other spheres of life. And we spent the day talking about that. But today we dove into the spiritual. And we talked about a number of things. And that is, or was, that discussion rather, was largely about my path of Christianity. But when I wrote this morning, I sat down to collect my thoughts before going into the day job for a few hours and then going up to Cleveland. And I wrote the following. Here we go. Above, I wrote, I burnt out. This was 2016. I quit everything I was doing on the farm and homestead for the market gardens. I communicated to my parents that I had reached my limit. The following year, in January or February, I also took Financial Peace University for the very first time, something that would change my life forever. I didn't quite know the impact it would have on me at that time. And that was something I'd written 10 days ago during my second or third bout with this spiritual journaling that led to some other things. And this morning, as I reflected on that in preparation for the meeting with my behavioral health therapist today, I wrote a couple additional things. Now is the time to cultivate my relationship with God and grow. Grow the family business and embrace the challenges that come along with it. It appears to be the only way to achieve the next step beyond the peace that comes with my finances. The only way I will find peace is by becoming the homesteading businessman I dream of being. First goal, baby step 3. I won't get into the details of how I am going to secure my emergency fund, but it is going to be outside of the banking system. It is something I've detailed out here. If you want to learn more and exchange some ideas about how to maintain your savings account or a savings account outside of the banking systems, join the Telegram chat, t.me/allaroundgrowth, and engage in the conversation with us there. You'll have to find out and do that there because I'm not going to get into it here. But once I have done that, I can focus my mental energy on the next step of the exit strategy, all while exploring and cultivating my relationship with God. For in doing so, I find peace. This and old-time music. Okay, so I wrote that this morning, guys, as I got ready for my day in preparation for the meeting with the behavioral health therapist. So I'm going to hit the road, and we're going to talk about that question. The question that was asked by my behavioral health therapist at the end of today's session is, what do I think is happening right now? Now, there's a bit of context lacking in that because most of today covered 4.5 typed pages of my journaling on the spiritual path that I'm currently walking, right? I am reluctant to call it an obsession because I believe there is somewhat of a negative connotation associated with that word. But to say that my spiritual journey is of interest is an understatement. So when I'm asked what do I think is happening right now, I think that the timing of this question is incredibly appropriate. I think that the spiritual rebirth, if you will, within myself lately, and its timing right now is no coincidence whatsoever. Spring, new moon, transition, rebirth, Easter, sunrise. What's happening right now is the literal writing of the next chapter of my life. I am creating it with you. And I would encourage you and invite you to do the same thing right along with me. And do the same thing right alongside those who think like you, those who are of like mind. In the Telegram chat group, t.me/allaroundgrowth, we have a MeWe group as well. We also have a Facebook group. There are communities out there where you can connect with all of us. And granted, it is a smaller community at this time because it is largely grassroots. I am not promoting this a whole lot other than sharing it on various social medias and pushing it a little bit here and there, but what's happening here is mostly what's happening because those of us out there who want it to happen are making it happen. We are creating the community that is lacking in the other communities that we are a part of. The other communities that we are a part of are awesome in their own right. Many of them are specific to certain things. This is more along the lines of a broad umbrella type of community that embraces any and all types of people who are on a journey of their own towards building the life and homesteads of their dreams. That's what we're all doing. And that's what's happening right now. You know, the other day, I guess it was Easter dinner. Sunday night, this past Sunday night, traditional Easter. Now, we didn't celebrate Easter as a family. We got together the Sunday prior, Palm Sunday, and had our family dinner. So yesterday, or Sunday rather, it was just Mom, Dad, and myself. Mom and Dad roasted up a chicken, I made a salad, and we had a simple meal. And we talked about a number of things. One of the things that we talked about and laughed about was that 10 years ago, I was living in California. And not too much behind that, you know, not much in the past. I was actually, you know, largely while I was living with my girlfriend is when I had this mindset. I moved out to California, saw my parents continue to struggle with this land, with the markets and everything that they were doing. I didn't really understand it. And I had actually encouraged them to sell this land. Goddamn cops back there. Got nothing better to do except just sit there on the side of the road with their door open, waiting to catch people speeding. Good Lord. Way to go, boys. Way to go. To protect and serve, except, well, that's no longer applicable. The Supreme Court ruled that years ago. To command, dictate. All right, we're not going to go there. Yeah, that question is, what do I think is happening right now? It's the creation of life. You know, like I was saying, Mom and Dad over dinner were laughing about the past and the drastic differences that can take place in over 10 years. I mean, just over 10 years, I went from my encouraging my parents to cut their losses and sell the property to losing 100 pounds and making a podcast about building the life and homestead of my dreams and encouraging others to do the same and connecting with all of those who are actively doing exactly that. So where are we going to be 10 years from now? 2030? You going to be with me celebrating a 10-year anniversary of the podcast? That's a weird thing. It's 8 years from now. What about 3 years from now? Where are you going to be? You still going to be working the same old job you've been working? Still going to be doing the same old things you've been doing? Still going to be eating the same old things you've been eating? Watching the same old TV shows you've been watching? listening to the same podcast you've been listening to? Or are you going to take an active role in your own life? Get behind the driver's seat. Steer. Guide that vessel that you're currently inhabiting. That vessel body that you call yourself, and navigate it. Someplace with potential untapped. The choice is yours. You know, we all make choices. If you're satisfied with your life, don't change. If you are content with mediocrity, keep doing what you're doing by all means. And I don't say mediocrity, or I don't mean it at least, in a dismissive way. I just believe that complacency and the stagnation, if you will. No, let me rephrase that. I believe that if you're not growing, you're dying. I believe that if you're not moving, it leads to stagnation. Stagnation is no good. It's no good for growth. Well, it's good for growth, not the kind of growth that we want. And it is because of this that I think, or at least I associate this with the consistent mediocrity. You know, and if you're okay with that, you know, that's cool. Hey, you do you, man. I appreciate that. You know, if you're listening to this, that's probably not you. Because if at some point it is or was, and you had listened to this in the past, I probably said something that rubbed you the wrong way and you found undesirable, and hence you listen no more. That's okay with me. I'm not here to win audience members or to get likes or to be an influencer. You know what? Speaking of influencers, you know what influencers are? People that seek that. Influencers are like politicians. I'm sorry. Influencers are like people who are like politicians, except they're too stupid to be politicians. And too stupid, too lazy, too I don't know, whatever you want to call it. They're not in the position to do so. Yet they like the power that politicians have. So they get this soft power, or at least they seek it, those who, you know, want to dominate social media or whatever. I mean, if you're trying to do it with an end goal, that's cool. Like, I don't, you know, look, guys, I don't, quite frankly, know what the end goal of this show is. When I started it, I didn't really know. Over time, it became, the end goal was building the life and homestead of our dreams. Yeah, I understand it's a little bit vague and ambiguous, and it basically means whatever you want it to mean. I know. I'm hoping for broad appeal here. And I'm hoping that as people listen and I gain audience and whatnot, listeners and whatnot through the broad appeal, that those who find the nature of the content that I speak about offensive, or at least the way in which I frame it as such, then it will slowly weed them out without catering to a specific audience, right? Where the hell was I going with all this? Don't know. So here's what I'm going to do. As I get up to this stoplight here, this big Circle K, I'd like to share with you some additional context from the notes that I discussed with my behavioral health therapist about my spiritual journey. I was encouraged to journal about this journey of and towards Christianity, right? So what does that mean? It means that I've got about 15 minutes to cover this here, based on where I am. So let's see what I can do. By all means, I don't want to bore you, right? And I could easily cut this off right now, but I think that there are some of you who may be interested in this. Just like based on what I gathered from the chat, there were some that were not entirely familiar with the background and the backstory on functional medicine. So hopefully the first 10 minutes or so of today's episode provided the foundational understanding for that. And now that there is a bit more of a foundational understanding with functional medicine, you've got the idea as to why I am talking with this behavioral health therapist and what we've been talking about. And lately it's been my spiritual path. And this spiritual path is oftentimes challenging and lonely, right? And what else do we have here? It's challenging and it's oftentimes lonely. This morning I highlighted key points from my journaling so that I could reference them easily and not just go on a diatribe and read this to her. So those key points that I highlighted will be easy to reference while I'm driving. Not only is it challenging and lonely, but the fact that I feel drawn towards the exploration of the Orthodox faith is something that I feel very challenged with talking to people about. First of all, I was born Roman Catholic. I grew away from I actively left the church. Like, didn't dismember myself from it, right? But I just stopped going to church. As soon as I became of age and my parents said, "You're an adult, you can make your own decisions," basically 18. I said, "I'm done." By the time I was in my early 20s, I was going back to church, seeking something to fill that void. I don't believe my brother or sister have done this, but for me it was something that I have been doing back and forth, trying to fill that void in some way, shape, or form my whole life. And in setting goals for the 2022 year, I had a conversation with the pastor of my church in November of last year, where I talked about what I was longing for with my spirituality, and he presented me with the word theosis. And And at that point, I started doing some deep dives into what that word meant and began further exploring the Orthodox faith, which was something that had already been presented to me in some various ways, shapes, and forms, largely through some dialogue I'd seen on Twitter from a few people that had put on a podcast called the Royal Path, where they were breaking down the Nicene Creed. And I found that interesting because it aligned in timing with this discussion and much of everything else that was going on. And the Nicene Creed specifically was something that always moved me deeply over the years, but was something that I hadn't heard or spoken in a very long time, since last attending a Roman Catholic Mass, which was probably, I don't know, my grandfather's funeral. That's when it was. Hell, I don't know if we said the Nicene Creed at his funeral. But my grandfather was a staunch Catholic. He was a devout Catholic. But yet there are certain aspects of Catholicism that I've never understood and I can't understand. The Nicene Creed is not one of them. So in March last month, I decided that after months of listening to people talk about the Nicene Creed and speaking with one of them about it, what's the best way to go about learning? I was instructed to not read, or it was suggested to me to not read anything about it. Right. To not watch videos, learn about how it differs from these other denominations. The advice and counsel that I was given was to go to Divine Liturgy, attend the services, talk to the priest, experience it. So last month I decided to do that. Ironically or not ironically enough, it was the Sunday of Orthodoxy. And the following day, March 14th, was when I met with my behavioral therapist. We talked about a number of other things, and I was actually reluctant to bring up this spiritual stuff, right? Because I feel, like I said, it's challenging, it's hard to articulate, and come on, you know, look, man, I'm talking to a behavioral health therapist at the Cleveland Clinic. I don't want to open up this weird Orthodox door, right? I don't know how well that's going to be received. But at the end of our appointment, you know, and the experience from the day prior at my first Divine Liturgy, the experience was so profound that I had to mention something to her. In addition to everything else that was going on that we talked about. I was quick in what I mentioned at the end of our appointment at that time, but she seemed very intent, like in listening to me, more so than normal. So to say that, like, she found what I was saying curious was, you know, to say the least. And that's why she encouraged me to journal about them. And then when I was finally done sharing my experiences and paused to collect myself, she encouraged me to journal about that because she suspected that it would help me effectively process everything. And she encouraged me to do so and process everything because she herself was Orthodox, is Orthodox. And again, last session with her, we did not talk about this, but circled back to it today. And to say that this is that this discovery is surprising. Under normal circumstances, I would say, yeah, what a coincidence. This is surprising, but these aren't normal circumstances. Nothing about this is normal. It could be any. It's the furthest thing from normal as far as I'm concerned. So the fact that as I'm going through all of this, the behavioral health therapist that I've been working with for the past 6 months reveals to me that, oh, by the way, I'm also Orthodox. And I can identify with a lot of what you are saying is just another indicator to me that everything is falling into line, or falling in line, rather. It's wild. And as I wrote this, I had to pause. And I had to think about that for a moment. I had to actually reread that last statement to myself. That everything is falling in line. I mean, as I speak this, I have to repeat that to myself again. I have put in the work. Everything is falling into line. That's not an excuse to become overly confident and arrogant. It's just a simple acknowledgement of what is. And guys, I'm telling you, this is how it works. If we put in the time, we will experience the results. And if we put in the time with consistency, we will experience those results faster and with more regularity. So this experience with functional medicine, and again, I've got to ramp it up with the nutritional component and focus on that over the next 3 months so that I can get this testing done and, get on with my life. I'll have effectively spent a year, 3 months from now will be July. And by the time the testing and such goes through again, I'll have effectively spent a year repatterning and reprogramming my life. Much of that has been documented here in the form of podcast episodes, and it looks like I am going to have to take a detour up here. The road is out. What do we got going on here? Yeah. That does not look good. 1,000 feet ahead, there is no road. So we're gonna turn down Crow Road here and do a little jaunt down the back and side roads. But yeah, this whole I'll have effectively spent a year or so repatterning, reprogramming my life, relearning how to live. So as we look at that question again, after today's session with the behavioral health therapist, as part of this whole functional medicine process, what do I think is happening right now? Well, I think what's happening right now is I am learning how to effectively live. And what I think is happening right now is I'm continuing to grow and evolve as a person. I'm continuing to grow and evolve as a man. Because I'm continuing to grow and evolve, it's all part of all-around growth. And what is happening is that, whoops, that's not a four-way stop. What's happening is that as I continue to grow, I continue to realize and remember that my passion and my dreams, and perhaps more specifically why I struggled so much in finding my passion and living my dreams, is because my focus was more on my passion and my dreams instead of focusing on the cultivation of a relationship with God and thinking about what God wants for me. Thinking about what God is passionate about for me. What God has in store, dreams about for my life. And that's not a bold thought. Is it so bold to think that God thinks about you? I don't think so. I used to. I mean, if I used to give it any thought at all. But we all fit into this somehow. And as I say this right now, I drive past a house that I used to live in with my parents before we even built the property. Here at the corner of Earhart and Crow Road. This is where I shipped all of my belongings to when I still lived in California. 3282 Earhart Road. Look it up on a map. It's a kind of a cool property, just a stone's throw from home. So I'm going to have to get to wrapping this up soon. But the focus is different now. What God Wants. I think that's a book by Neil Donald Walsh, I believe. I have it on my shelf. Perhaps it's worth rereading. I don't know. But, you know, I can wrap it up with this one final little story about part of the draw towards a different spiritual path. Is, you know, a lot of churches have Lenten series, and when I attended church, the church where I'm a member of now, an active member, I found myself distracted by the Lenten series. And when I find myself attending Divine Liturgy, even though I don't understand much of what's going on, I'm more in the moment. I am experiencing these intense emotional experiences that I can only articulate as some kind of a divine intimacy with God. Shout out to Chad, hat tip to Chad on Divine Intimacy. That is a book from Chad Lemoyne, listener of the audience, who's been doing a daily meditation on Twitter. So check out Chad on Twitter at Chad L is my name, and read or listen along and watch him read and share some wisdom, some biblical wisdom from a book, Divine Intimacy. But it is only that I can say that I am experiencing, and I want more of that because I experience less of that when I'm distracted by other messages that I feel take away from worship from God and Christ. I understand that the message is applicable, and that's what it's all about, is the message, but I long for something deeper. And that something deeper is what I think is happening right now. All of this that's going on in life. It's functional medicine, the symbiosis with the 2022 goal-setting workbook and the Eagles community, the podcast, even this discussion right here and right now as I pull up the driveway. What's happening right now is the literal, excuse me, oh boy, that's a healthy meal that I'm tasting again. But my friends, what's happening right now is the literal co-creation of life. You and me doing it together right now. Through the hard times, through the good times, through the bad times, through the easy times, through all the times. You've been with me and stood side by side with me from whenever you started listening all the way up until now. There's something that compels you to do this with me. I don't know what that is, but I'd love to hear from you what you think it is. What compels you to do this with me? What compels you to listen to the show? All right? And in the same manner, in that question that was asked to me, what do I think is happening right now? Well, I gave you my answer. I want to ask you, what do you think is happening right now? And I want you to answer in the comments. If you're in the Telegram chat, I want you to answer in the group chat, t.me/allaroundgrowth. If you stumbled across this on social media, whether it's on Float, Minds, MeWe, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case may be, wherever you saw this linked to, comment below with what you think is happening right now. And moreover, share the episode on social media with what you think is happening right now with no particular context at all, and encourage others to do the same. Let's get some dialogue talking, or going. Let's get some dialogue going, rather, about what's happening right now. Encourage others to do the same so that we can all build a healthy, positive, and beneficial life. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
What can I do? The needs are many and answers a few. People turn away and I wonder why. If I can help somebody, then I want to try. People may think that it's all that I believe in friendship and love. And truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. If we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call. You know the times are wasting every day, and we can help somebody along the way. People may think that it's all that I believe in friendship and love. Truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. You're an odd fellow.